Completely unexpected if you look at this season. Completely expected if you look at history. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game. 2018 edition, number 115 in the books. And it was a shocker to those who believe in Vegas, who believe in past results, who believe in the Michigan defense is the best in the country. That was shattered in Columbus this afternoon. Ohio State over Michigan, 62. I said 62-39. I'm going to run through my game notes and certainly leave your comments because I've got a lot of perspective on what actually happened in the game and what it means. Michigan out of the gate, Grant Perry dropped a third down throw on the first drive of the game that would have converted a third down into a first down for the Wolverines. They give the football up. All right, Ohio State crossing routes then took hold on the very first drive of the game. Crossing routes all over the place with KJ Hill, with Paris Campbell, DeMario McCall, Chris Olave, and he scored the touchdown, and the Buckeyes led it 7-0. Tariq Black, who has been missed by this Michigan football team the entire season, one of the prized recruits out of high school football a couple years ago, only his second reception as Shea Patterson moved around, avoided the rush, and found Tariq Black, who nestled in the zone very nicely to convert a big third down on the Wolverines' second drive, but they got stopped in the red zone, and that was one of our talking points this week was the Wolverines' inability to score in the red zone, one of the worst touchdown marks in the nation this year, despite having all the key components you would think to be successful in the red zone. All right, they couldn't score the touchdown. They go for the field goal, and they hit it to make it at that point at 7-3. All right, Johnny Dixon streaking down the field was held up, and this turned out to be a litany, and this is one of my issues in place of calling it a pet peeve because I hate that term. One of my issues with both college and professional football right now, I think that there just has to be something changed about the pass interference call, whether it be the way players are coached long-term or the actual call. The pass interference call is ruining the games. There are too many of them. And then there are tons of times in which the officials, there's only so many of them, and they can't catch everything, can't see everything, and there are other pass interference calls that should be made that would even disrupt the flow of the game even more. I just hate to see a 75-yard drive when two of the plays and 30 of the yards are pass interference calls, and that seems to be the norm, and that was too much a part of this game. There was a hold on Johnny Dixon early in the game. He was streaking down the field. That would have been a touchdown, but Ohio State did not get the call there. Pete Werner, who has been much maligned at linebacker for Ohio State, with a beautiful play on Zach Gentry. Shea Patterson threw a remarkable pass over the top of Werner into the hands of Zach Gentry that would have given Michigan the lead. It was a perfectly placed football, but Werner got his hand in there, stripped the ball out of Gentry's hands, and that forced another Jake Moody field goal, and it was 7-6 Buckeyes. All right, senior Malcolm Pridgeon with a late hit on a big 9-yard gain by J.K. Dobbins that most likely would have been converted into a first down. The Ohio State tight end on the third series of the game had a holding penalty that backed the Buckeyes up to a 2nd and 20. So you had some Ohio State penalty issues. They could have made this an even bigger blowout for Ohio State, but on the two of the first three drives after the touchdown, the next two drives, Ohio State mistakes in penalties cost the Buckeyes trying to advance the football because, again, they had the late hit on a 9-yard gain by J.K. Dobbins that would have put them on 2nd and 1, and then also the other drive was derailed by the holding penalty. All right, the Michigan right guard and right tackle, they jumped on a 4th and 2, so Michigan putting at that point in the game, it wasn't proven that their defense was going to be shredded. So they moved the ball out to midfield, had a 4th and 2, down 7-6 at this point, and they were going to go for it. But their right guard and right tackle both jumped, and they had a legal procedure and had to punt on a 4th and 7. All right. Chris Olave, What a game this kid had. We saw him for the first time, Ohio State fans did, just a few weeks ago. And we'll talk about Olave in just a second and run down his emergence on this football team, because this, you would think, would be the last position that anyone would emerge on this Ohio State roster. They are loaded at wide receiver. Not that they can't find better wide receivers, but the guys that they have are entrenched as mostly seniors. Johnny Dixon, Austin Mack before he got hurt, Paris Campbell, KJ Hill, even Benjamin Victor as a redshirt. I believe he's a redshirt sophomore. No, he played in the playoff game against Clemson in 2016. He's a junior as well. So they're loaded at wide receiver, and Terry McLaurin, who leads the team in touchdown receptions. And but they find room for this Chris Olave, who made a great adjustment to the football. Ball thrown down the right sideline. He undercut the defensive back, Brandon Watson, who had all sorts of issues on this game. Brandon Watson had a miserable day trying to keep up with Ohio State playmakers in the secondary. And on this play, he had decent coverage, but Olave saw that the ball was thrown underneath and inside the field, and he undercut the defensive back. And you don't see that kind of adjustment to the football in that manner too many times. Catches the ball for the touchdown to make it 14-6 at that point. Watson had a pass interference on Olave earlier on a 3rd and 17 play. So that was the drive from hell for Mr. Watson. All right, Johnny Dixon on a touchdown on a blown coverage in which he split the zone, and they lost him and gave him up, and he ran ball by himself in the end zone, and Dwayne Haskins found him for the touchdown. One of 5 touchdown passes for Haskins, 21-6. And so the Michigan defense giving us an effort at this point that like we have not seen this year. They have destroyed every offense they've played. I'm trying to think of the best offense that they've played was most likely Notre Dame, but that was out without Ian Book at quarterback, without Dexter Williams, their home run hitter at running back. So the best offense in terms of skill position players might have been Penn State, and they completely shut them down and annihilated them and gave up a meaningless touchdown. They held Wisconsin to only 7 points before, again, a garbage touchdown to make it 38-13. Michigan State didn't do anything against this defense. Nobody did anything against this defense after Northwestern had a big first quarter and led 17-0. But Ohio State ripped them to shreds. They obviously saw more talent on this Ohio State roster. We talked about this all week. Michigan, the better team throughout the season. Ohio State, still the better talent. There's still a talent gap. It's not substantial, but talent gap between Ohio State and Michigan, and I talked about that all week. All right, so Johnny Dixon scores the touchdown and makes it 21-6. The place was rocking, Ohio Stadium going, and Jim Harbaugh and his staff made one of its best calls of the day in terms of the play calling to settle the offense down, get them some easy yardage, take advantage of the crowd, amping up the defense, and the Buckeyes being overly aggressive coming out of that touchdown. They threw the screen pass to Josh McEwen, which gained a ton of yardage, really set up the rest of that drive. There was a pass interference there on Damon Arnett as well. Nico Collins made one of 2 exceptional touchdown catches on the day to make it 21-13. Right out of that play, that touchdown to get the Wolverines within 21-13, DeMario McCall, bam, kickoff return, muff right through the hands, sets up Michigan at the 9-yard line. One play, Shea Patterson to Chris Evans, and it's 21-19. That's when the Buckeyes could have fallen down. That's when they could have given up. That's when they not necessarily could have given up, but the situation could have overwhelmed them at that point because they had played almost a perfect first half, led 21-6. They get some pass interference calls against them. The Arnett play converted a 3rd down where they thought they got a stop. They played really good defense. Most of that series got some behind-the-chains kind of plays by Malik Harrison and by Chase Young in particular, and Werner had some stops behind the line of scrimmage. They give up the pass interference call, and bam, then on the kickoff. McCall fumbles, and it was telling that Urban Meyer put Demario McCall back on the field and actually utilized him on offense. Got him right back out there, showed confidence in the kid, allowed him to catch the football on the kickoff the rest of the game. So, Michigan gets a gift, 9-yard drive. They score 21-19. Big play by Werner tracking down Shea Patterson on the 2-point conversion. Jim Harbaugh, like most coaches, why do they do this? It's 21-19 near the end of the first half. Don't chase points. It's stupid. There are going to be a zillion points in this game. As we saw, 101. You're only at 40 points at this point, 21-19. There are going to be a ton of points in this game. Don't chase points. Coaches do it way before it should be done. Jim Harbaugh, it cost him twice in this game. Well, it didn't cost them because they got blown out. But it could have been 21-20. It was 21-19 because Shea Patterson got sacked by Werner. It's 21-19. And then Ohio State put together a remarkable drive. They only had 40 seconds, and they went the length of the field, and Haskins tore them to shreds. The last play went to McCall on a beautifully placed ball on the wheel route, and McCall got it down about the 1.5-yard line. Then the lack of Ohio State being able to, despite the offensive line played a remarkable game, but the absence of the typical Ohio State power running game really hurt right here. They got stood up by the Michigan defense inside the 1-yard line and had to kick the field goal to make it 24-19. I thought that could have been pivotal. It obviously turned out not to be, but at that point, Ohio State could have gone up by 2 scores at halftime. They only were up by 1, 24-19, although I saw a screenshot that was sent to me in which the Michigan defense on one of those goal line plays had 12 men on the field. It was missed by the officials. It could have been an Ohio State first down inside the 1, half the distance. And anyway, Ohio State could have had another play there and a half yard closer, or about a yard to a half yard, something in that range closer. All right, that was not called. It was 24-19 at the break. All right. Again, Michigan makes the stand at the goal line at 24-19. Second half, Michigan gets a stop out of the gate. Ohio State drives down the field on their second possession, and another great drive, but they stall at the 2 once again. No power running game. Tate Martell comes into the game. He's negated as any kind of factor. If the Buckeyes are going to continue with this approach against really good defenses like they will face in Northwestern and a bowl game or the college football playoff, they need to trust Tate Martell to throw the ball. They just have to against really good defenses. And for as much as they shredded Michigan on this particular day, that was the one place where Michigan stood up to the challenge, was the Tate Martell package. Another field goal made it 27-19. Malik Harrison played out of his mind in this game. He was all over the place. I think there was a number of breakdowns in which, during the replay that was shot behind the line of scrimmage, you could see where Malik Harrison would read and diagnose the play, and then as soon he would show the patience to read the play and then go after the runner and the ball carrier and track him down. Tremendous play. Sean Wade on a particular series bailed out the Michigan offense with a bad pass interference play. The ball was not going to be caught on a 3rd and 13. But then, bam, this might have been the backbreaker for Michigan. They still, in terms of game situation with points, point differential, and time, still had plenty of time, and we're only down 15 after this play. But this was kind of the backbreaker. Chris Olave blocked the punt, recovered perfectly, just popped into the air into the hands of Sevyn Banks, who ran for a touchdown. 34-19 Buckeyes. Chris Olave, what a find this kid has been. He's a true freshman from California. He is not one of the Buckeyes' top recruits. So you typically, in looking up most of these guys, like I do, watching most of these games, not just Ohio State, watching anybody throughout the country, I will readily, especially if I know that the kid's a freshman, I'll look up to see what his recruiting ranking was according to the Giant 247 Sports and their composite of all the major ranking services. And with Ohio State, you typically see, oh, he was the third-rated safety. Oh, he was the number 2 inside linebacker. Oh, he was the number 8 offensive tackle. Chris Olave was the 68th rated wide receiver. He was only a top 50 player in the state of California. He was only a top 900 player nationally. And he's making this kind of impact as a freshman for Ohio State, both in the passing game and now on special teams with the blocked punt. 7 Banks with the touchdown again, 34-19. Key play for Michigan the next series, Zach Gentry dropped a pass down the seam that would have been a big play in conversion for Michigan. All right, Chase Young had a number of big plays. One of the biggest was the one that if that wasn't the backbreaker by Olave on the blocked punt, this was it when Chase Young, when Shea Patterson was scrambling, Chase Young chased him down and altered the throw, grabbed his arm as he was throwing the ball out of bounds, and the ball popped in the air, fluttered right into the hands of Jordan Fuller. That led to a, I believe, Mike Weber touchdown to make it 41-19. Michigan was still in it when they drove right down the field. Nico Collins made another spectacular catch on the back shoulder, and it was 41-25. Jim Harbaugh went for 2 again, and he shouldn't have either time. And the Buckeyes rolled from there. That's where Michigan had their last gasp shot because they drove the ball down the field. They did score with about 9.5 minutes left to make it 41-25, but they could not stop Ohio State. Paris Campbell right back with the afterburners. It was impressive to see him turn the corner on the 78-yard touchdown run in which he got to the edge, and he was able to completely turn the corner and outrace the Michigan defense to make it 48-25. All right, Michigan certainly was not helped by the number of injuries they had to some of their best players. I could not completely track who was out of the game for good and who came back, but I believe Devin Bush was injured in the third quarter chasing Demario McCall. That might have been the play actually near the end of the first half that went down to the 1-yard line when Devin Bush was chasing Demario McCall. I believe he got cleated or got hit in the head with a knee or a foot and had to leave the game. I don't believe Devin Bush came back. Somebody can correct me on that. Also, the status of Rashawn Gary. We saw him knocked out at one point and had to leave the game. David Long, one of the best cover corners in college football, had to leave the game in the second half as well. All right, this was the 22nd time that Ohio State faced Michigan, both as top 10 teams in 115 times. You can't take out the Luke Fickell year. Of course, it counts in 2011, but that was the inconsequential year in regards to championships. And for Ohio State fans, considering that they lost that year to Michigan 40-34, and the very next day, Urban Meyer was announced as the head coach. I don't believe there was much pain in Buckeye Nation after that one Michigan loss in 2011 because it turned into an Urban Meyer announcement as the head coach, and we've seen what's happened since then. 15 consecutive wins with Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer on the sideline. That's remarkable to many of us old-timers who have watched this rivalry back since, for me, the late 70s. Woody Hayes losing his final 3, Earl Bruce going 5-4. The John Cooper years were a disaster in regards to national championship aspirations, crushed by the Maize and Blue, going 2-10-1. Urban Meyer, like him or hate him, he's a legend. That goes without saying. That goes without what would have happened in this game had he lost 75-0 today. He is one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football, and he was 5 years ago. So he's only just padding the legend at this point. Of course, he's got one of the greatest records in the history of college football. He has the best winning percentage in college football in modern times. Jim Harbaugh, on the other hand, we will have much to say about his status as the Michigan coach. Yes, he will continue to coach Michigan football. They've had a very strong season. They will still go to a New Year's Six game at 10-2 and still be ranked in the top 10 in the country. But to have this kind of leverage in the game, to continue to lose over and over and over and not lose a bitter defeat in regards to a last-second field goal, but to be crushed as the nation's number one defense statistically, and to come into this game and just get annihilated on the scoreboard 62-39, and to give up this kind of yardage and point total to your bitter nemesis has to be crushing to the Maize and Blue Nation. Most points ever in the game. Ohio State's best total up until now was 50 points on two different occasions. The famous 1968 game in which Woody Hayes would have gone for 3, but he went for 2. And the game another time, let's see, was 50-14. And there was another game in which they scored 50 points, and I'm losing it right now. Anyway, 50 points on 2 occasions for the Buckeyes. Most points ever scored against Michigan in regulation, 58 points, was the record. Of course, they scored 62, and that was by Cornell. That's how far you had to go back against Michigan football to see that many points scored, 1891. And they didn't mention the overtime game in which Michigan gave up that many points, but I recall a Denard Robinson duel against Illinois and some crazy score like 76, 68, something like that. So that might have been the game. There was also a crazy Northwestern game that was like 55-52. But I believe it was the Illinois game circa 2011, 10, something in that range. Dwayne Haskins has set the all-time Big Ten record for passing yards in a season, passing Curtis Painter, and also set the all-time touchdown record with 41, and he still has 2 games, maybe 3 games to play. He's been remarkable. We will have much analysis on Ohio State and Northwestern for the Big Ten Championship. The teams last played a couple years ago. The Buckeyes won in Columbus 24-20. Ohio State has only lost once to Northwestern going back to 1972. That was a game that I remember well in 2004 when the Buckeyes were on a 3-game skid and they lost at Northwestern in overtime. Otherwise, Ohio State, having not played Northwestern every year, has obviously still completely dominated this series. But Northwestern has proven up to the challenge as an underdog time and time and time again this season, and at last glance led Illinois 17-0 in their final regular season game. All right, like, comment, and subscribe to the Voice of College Football right here at Mark Rogers TV. We discuss, debate, and analyze college football like nobody else. I showed you my tote board of content that I'm going to attempt to deliver to you with all the big rivalry games and playoff implications this weekend, plus a number of big programs like Florida State, like Nebraska, who will not go to bowl play. Therefore, this is the last time we've seen them for 2018. But what do they have in store, considering the coaching situation? First-year head coach Willie Taggart, first-year head coach Scott Frost, and what personnel's coming back for 2019. We're going to take a look at those programs as well, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.